Hey yo, today guys, I want to talk about something that I'm calling the tragedy of Irish powerlifting. And that sounds really bad, but I really believe what's going on now is both amazing and very sad. Um, Today is the day of the IDFPA Single Lift Championships, day one of them. And I believe there was 380 lifters registered across the 2 days. That is an absolutely astounding turnout. There's more registered for one competition now than there was powerlifting in Ireland 5 years ago. Like federations like the IDFPA, like the IPO, have done an incredible job of bringing lifters into them and giving them a platform to lift and a platform to compete on. And obviously that's beneficial for so many people because it means as gym owners now we have more accessibility to good equipment, we've better scope to help people improve their life and get stronger. But as a former powerlifter and as somebody who's still very, very passionate about powerlifting, the one thing I feel sad about is that these guys aren't maybe getting the education they could get on the way up. So, like, let's say today the IDFPA, they ran an amazing competition. The spotters did some great jobs all the way through. There were some killer lifts. There was lots of motivation. The venue itself was better than any I've seen in Irish powerlifting, but there were still so many silly mistakes being made. And one of the biggest issues with a big influx of lifters coming into the sport is that nobody's ever really learned kind of about powerlifting from, old school powerlifters, say. I was super fortunate to train and to grow up with the guys from Hercules Gym in Dublin who were and still are some of the best powerlifters ever in the country. And anytime you went to a competition, you went in prepped knowing exactly what was going to happen. You practiced it as it happened in competition in the gym. And you just had the support of an incredible network of lifters there who had 15, 20, 30, maybe 40 or 50 years of experience between them, and in some cases as individuals. So that meant you went in always knowing what was going on. It meant if you made a mistake in the gym, it was punished. And you just had this increased level of respect for these guys because they walk the walk and they talk the talk. Now, you get people coming in who let's say, have done one or two competitions and then they start to bring lifters to competitions, which is brilliant because it means, the entries go up, you've more talent coming into the federations, you've more people in the country then enjoying powerlifting and using it as an expression. The only problem with that is, though, some of the sillier mistakes and some of the things that are so easily avoided never get ironed out. So, I'm talking about two main things, I guess, when I talk about this. Number one is warm-ups and the timing of warm-ups, and also the nature of them. And the other one is just, based off today, just having seen the squats, it's simple stuff like setting your grip up properly, setting your upper back up properly, and getting a better bar position. And then I guess probably the third one, if you want to go into it, is not fully understanding the rules and not practicing how you play. So I'm going to talk really quickly about all three, super short, simply because I'm exhausted. Sarah's had a big day and we're just going to kick back and watch a bit of TV now. But I'm going to go into these a little bit further over the next couple of weeks because I think, I'm very fortunate to have a platform to talk about this stuff to you guys. And I have had quite a bit of experience, 8 or 9 years powerlifting, and I've hit some pretty decent lifts. So let's talk first about warm-ups, okay? The thing with warm-ups, especially, on the squat today, when you're warming up, what you've got to think about is this, right? On average, every attempt will take about 1 minute per lifter when you include bar loading, setting up the racks, announcing, refereeing, all that stuff. You're looking at a minimum of 1 minute per lifter. So if, for example, your flight has 12 lifters in it, that's 12 minutes around. It's a minimum 36 minutes of flight, assuming nobody dumps and loses the bar and assuming nobody has any fourth attempts. So that means you're going to have about 5 minutes in between flights minimum. So if you have, if you're in flight number 4 and there's 3 flights of 12 lifters, you've got, 12 lifters with 3 attempts is 36. You got a 5 minute break is 41. You've got that 3 times. That's about 120 minutes. You've got a minimum there of 2 hours of rest before you have to go. Then if you are in the flight and you're later in that flight, let's say you're the 10th or 11th lifter, you still have another 10 minutes before you're due to start. So in total you're looking at 130-ish minutes, absolutely minimum before you have to go. It makes no sense to start warming up an hour and a half or 2 hours before. Think about what you do in the gym normally. This is the easiest way to look at it. How would I warm up before a training session, or how would I warm up to a lift? Let's say your opener. What you need to look at now is, how long does it take you to foam roll? How long does it take you to mobilize? How long does it take you to just get your head right? For most people, between walking into the gym, getting changed, So let's say you're in your gear on the gym floor to their kind of first moderately heavy, like 80 or 90% lift. Probably takes like 25 minutes at an absolute maximum 30. So that means if you're going to be lifting about 30 minutes after you start warming up or attempting your heaviest lift at that point, you should probably be backtracking that against your anticipated start time to where the other flight is. So for example, in this 4-flight scenario, obviously it'd be somewhere in the third flight. There's 12 lifters in there, it's 36-ish minutes long, you've got a 5-minute break at the end, say. That means you need to start warming up about 30 minutes before you do your work. So about 10 minutes into that flight. So that means by about the time the 9th lifter has gone within that flight, you start warming up. So by the time they've taken their first attempt, or the 9th person has taken their first attempt, you need to now start looking at your warm-ups. See, it's great being warm, it's great being fresh, but the hardest part about being in competition is you're on someone else's time schedule. You have all the madness that comes in a warm-up room, you have all of these ups and down periods, and the biggest challenge is controlling your adrenaline and controlling your heart rate. Competition is a stressful scenario. It's very, maybe if I blinked, look. It's a very stressful situation to be in. And if you constantly have this elevated level of adrenaline, eventually you're going to crash. If you're doing a single lift like a squat, that's not so bad. But if you're doing full power, the last thing you want to have is to crash in the middle. So generally speaking, when you look at adrenaline and you look at all that sort of stuff, caffeine and whatnot, you're going to get about 45 minutes worth of it from when you start to get amped. So if you're midway through your warm-ups and you start to get psyched up, it'll carry you through the rest of your flight. If you do that too early though, you're going to crash. So if you're up burning energy, dancing around, just dicking about, you need to just sit down and chill the fuck out, guys. One of the things that used to always happen when we went to competitions as a team was we just get put in a corner and told to relax. You know, headphones would go on, a seat would be got, you know, the hoodie would go over your head, you'd lie down, you'd sit down, basically do as little as possible, tune out completely from the atmosphere, because that atmosphere, it's brilliant to have it, but if your primary concern is lifting the most weight possible, which is what you're on the platform for, it's going to sap the energy out of you. So if you're worried about what everyone else is doing, if you're watching everyone else constantly jumping up and down and cheering for people, you know, you're going to burn out, your lifting's going to suffer. Okay, it's brilliant supporting people, but on competition day, you are number one priority. Okay, you have to remember that. You've busted your ass for 12 weeks. You've given up stuff. You've dieted, you've cut weight, you've been sore, you've missed lifts. You know, you've given so much to this, you've got to be number one on that day. So make that the priority. Make yourself the goal. So that's the warm-up stuff. Again, I'm going to dig into it a bit more. I'll do a blog post and stuff on it if you follow the Redfit page. So warm-ups is number one. Number two that I wanted to talk about really quickly is the rule stuff. We'll talk about the bar position and the squats later on. With the rules, look, it's really simple. When you squat, you got to walk back and stop. The referee tells you when to go. You stand up, you wait, the referee tells you when to come back. You know, the commands and stuff aren't that complicated, but if you're not used to practicing with them and if you're not used to using them in the gym, the problem is, you know, you go into autopilot. We have like this click whir response, like a tape recorder. You know, you click play, the tape goes into whir mode, and all of a sudden, you know, you're just operating autopilot. And under a competition day, under a stressful situation, it's like, you know, the military thing if you always revert back to training, so make sure you train correctly. If you're reverting back to just kind of going through the motions and rushing in and out of your squats, you're going to struggle. One of the things that Sarah did today that she did better than anyone else is she set up her squats perfectly. Like everything was, get under the bar, set your back, stand, 1 step, 2 step, and her feet were set. They went to the exact same position every time. She took the exact same distance of a step back. Once her feet were set, she set her chest. She went through the squat. That reliability and that consistency becomes so important when you start to hit the upper levels of your squatting capacity, when you go above double body weight, when you start going for 2.5 plus. Because if you set up stuff wrong, if you waste energy on the way out, and I was talking to Anto about this earlier, if you walk out and if you're leaning forwards, before you even start to squat, your hamstrings are going to get fried, it's going to pull you out of position, you're going to hit the bottom and you're going to get smashed into a good morning and you'll miss your lift. And even if you don't miss your lift, you're going to come up all shit, you're going to burn out your lower back, you're going to burn out your legs, and then benching and deadlifting later on in the day becomes a pain in the ass. So make sure you set up properly. 1 step, 2 step, look down, are they there? Practice that every single time, from empty bar to 20 kilos to 40 to 60 to 80. However many squat warm-ups you do and however many squat sets you do from today onwards, make sure you do that all of the time. You know, the best lifters in the world are consistent. They go and do the exact same stuff the exact same way all the time. They miss their squats with the exact same technique they get them with. What I mean by that is when they stand up, they get like a max lift, And then the one that's like 5 kilos too heavy, same chest position, same knee position, same tall, strong position, but they're just not strong enough to stand up through it. When you see people losing it by good morning, or their knees collapsing or hips shifting, it's usually a really good sign that that person has probably not hit a level of advanced technique yet. The strongest positions are always the strongest positions, and the reason why we go for such important technical training with our knees, with our chest, and with our hips is because that's the position that puts you in the most biomechanically advantageous position to lift heavy weights. If you're not in that position, you're not fulfilling your potential. Over time now, if you notice yourself with your lifts always breaking down, that just means you've got into a bad habit. You've probably let your body take it to where it wants to go versus where it needs to go. So really there's only one way to do that. And again, this is something I was talking to another coach today about. It was with Jay, if you're watching. Hi Jay. We were just talking about how once you hit a level, sometimes you just have to drop back and rebuild. So if you hit a level and you've come through a decent technique and you've hit good numbers all the way up, eventually you hit a level where you can't actually force through that with bad technique anymore. And no amount of assistance work or specific targeting of weak points will fix that. Your only option is to come right back down and to do it the right way. So why would you not do it the right way from the start? Instead of chasing weight, chase technique, chase technical perfection. Once your technique holds up, move up. Maxes don't have to be pretty, but they should really look something like your 95% or your 90%, and even better yet, your 50%. Some of the best compliments I've ever gotten about my lifting is that my squats were machine-like. And what the person meant when they said that was they just looked the same the entire time. Okay, so they were reliable, they were consistent, and when I missed a lift, I didn't miss it ugly, I just missed it because I wasn't strong enough. I could probably sit here and talk all night about the technical side of things. I could talk a bit more about the squat stuff. So really quickly, the two things I'm going to mention about squatting are your chest position and your eye position. So I'm going to turn sideways so you can see this a little bit better. What you need to have when you're squatting is a tight core, obviously, hopefully you can see it on the camera, and a good strong shoulder position. So if this becomes your position, with your head forwards, and with your elbows elevated and your chest rounded, the only thing that's going to happen when the weight gets heavy is it'll fold you in half. Now, if you're struggling there's a couple of things to look at. Number one is a stronger upper back, so more row work. Number two is using stuff like a safety squat bar, which forces you to get into that better position. Number three is just using better technique. You probably haven't even thought about this or considered it. You've probably just accepted when the weight goes onto your shoulders, you're going to lose your position. Next time, what you need to think about is, when it's on your shoulders, instead of surrendering, think big chest and chest true. That's not to say you hyperextend, but you pull your shoulders back from this forward position down into the back of their socket, where you'll create more of a shelf for the weight to sit. You put it a little bit back over your heels, and it just means when it gets heavy, you can extend backwards into it, rather than having like this flexed T-spine and this extended C-spine, which just looks like this horrible hunchback position. Okay, this is a much stronger position to be in, so go find it. Keep an eye on the Redford Facebook page, because I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. I really think setting up the squats with a good strong upper back and getting the bar right is probably the most important thing most lifters don't do in competition. It's especially crucial when you're just getting started, because it means long term you have the best chance of success. It's pushing on like 8:15 here. We're both wrecked, it's been a long day. So I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to say thank you to everybody who came up to me today and said how useful the other video was on some practical tips for your first competition. If you do have anything you want to talk about, or if you have anything you'd like to see me cover, just post up in the comments below and I'm happy to help. Guys, peace out. Stay strong.